A shoot shall come out of the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He should not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and the faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand over the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on my holy mountain. They will not hurt or destroy all on my holy mountain. For the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. On that day, the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling place shall be glorious. Let us consider this morning finding peace in the branch.
Ooh, Lord.
Finding peace in the branch. This is one of those amazing passages that the sermon will have to be inadequate simply because there's so many directions in this passage that a preacher could go. So whatever I choose and what the Lord has given me will not fully exhaust all the possibilities that we have in this morning's passage. We are going to consider finding peace in the branch on this second week of Advent. So often, around this time of year, life tends to accelerate, putting us even more into a reactionary role than our usual fast-paced, no time for quality lifestyle that has become a featured hallmark of 21st century living. There is a pressure to purchase gifts that is greater sometimes than the reality of what we can afford. We are bombarded with advertisements that use every trick in the book to entice us to spend money because consumer spending is vital to the nation's economy. But to listen to Madison Avenue advertisers, we must ignore the ominous warnings of a slowing economy, at least for the first quarter of 2014. Many of us, unfortunately, will be caught between the social pressures of purchasing gifts we can't afford in December and the economic pressures of a slowing economy in January. Yet for others, mental pressures mar this holiday season. All this talk of peace on earth, goodwill to all, can cause some to sink further into the abyss of their own depression. And while this time of year makes these issues more glaring, it is but a concentrated form of what we must confront all year long. Point being, it becomes extremely difficult to realize peace consistently under such adverse conditions if we are not intentional about having peace in our lives. If we're not intentional, we may say we want peace, but chaos, frustration, and uproar will be the default by which we live. As I have said to you repeatedly over the years, the season of Advent serves as God's prescription for us, not just during the frantic days of the holiday season, but it is to be continued throughout the remainder of the Christian year. You don't need hope for 4 weeks. You need it for 52 weeks.
Come on now.
You don't need joy for 1 month.
Come on.
You need joy for 12 months.
Amen.
You don't need love for 1 day. reason in this second week of Advent that we don't need peace for 1 hour during this worship service. We need peace for 8,760 hours.
Come on now.
But we recognize these are utopian ideals that are not always possible in a literal sense. So what exactly is possible? What is possible to experience more hope than last year, more joy than last year, more love than last year, more peace than last year.
Amen.
I say this knowing that this next year, 2014, may be the year that life, as you know it, may change permanently. Life may throw you a curve that you couldn't hit in a million years. But even if such calamity should knock at your door, I still maintain that it is possible to have more peace, more hope, more love, and more joy than you had the year before.
Come on.
This morning's text speaks about a peaceful kingdom. A kingdom where the wolf and the lamb lie in harmony, where the leopard and goat lie together, where the calf and the lion are side by side, where Palestinians and Jews live in peace, where Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland live without bloodshed, where Kurds, Shia, and Sunni live without suicide bombers, where Africa lives without AIDS, where America lives without racism, sexism, homophobia, classism, neglect of those on the margins, abject poverty, and is no longer dependent on foreign oil. It is where Oakland and Richmond live without escalating murder, and the least of these in Berkeley live without drugs and hopelessness. It is where righteousness shall be the belt around our collective waist, and faithfulness shall be the belt around our loins, and God's love immersed in our hearts.
Come on now.
The text reveals to us what is in the kingdom of God and what we should strive for here on earth so that God's will can be done on earth as it is in heaven. If we are not prepared to seek this as the goal, what is in all actuality an improbable task, but it is the goal, nevertheless, we will have fallen short of the Great Commission. This, however, is achieved not so much by what we say, but rather what we do.
Come on.
It is achieved when the light of God's peace, God's joy, God's hope, and God's love is allowed to shine through our tough exterior that has been fortified by our regrets, our disappointments, our setback, our guilt, and our shame.
Come on.
I suspect most of us who are followers of Jesus, reading this passage with the benefit of 21st century hindsight, will likely conclude this oracle is fulfilled by the birth of the Christ child. Now, that's a good Sunday school lesson. But I believe we need something more to confront these challenging days that we have in front of us with courage. But there are some unmistakable comparisons between this passage and Jesus' birth and his life as well. And for example, verse 2 tells us that the Spirit of the Lord shall be upon him. And is this not reminiscent of the baptism of Jesus in Matthew chapter 3? Jesus comes up out of the water and the heavens open up and he saw the Spirit of God descending on him like a dove. And a voice cried out from heaven, "This is my beloved with whom I am well pleased." And then down in Isaiah 6, verse 6, it says that a little child shall lead them. That carries all the imagery of the nativity scene that we are anticipating this season. In this morning's passage also contains words like righteousness, poor, meek, which reminds us of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. But this is not how the prophet Isaiah saw it. He was not writing about future generations. He was writing with the hope of a Messiah who would bring peace during his lifetime. The history of Israel up to this point was defined by a series of diametrically opposed seasons. A season of hope was followed by a season of disillusionment. A season of expectation was followed by a season of disappointment. A season of anticipation was followed by a season of despair. I don't need to tell you about the obvious similarity between Isaiah's day and what many of us are confronting right now. Some of you know firsthand how quickly the seasons can change, and not only that, you got the scars to prove it. Isaiah had witnessed the end of the reign of the Davidic kings as they drank from the bitter cup of slavery, military defeat, occupation, and exile. After the last Davidic king died in exile, the divine qualities that were reserved for a monarch became the job description for a Messiah, who would be sent by God, achieving militarily what was beyond the grasp of the king. Therefore, if we simply examine this passage exclusively through the lens of our own justification, we might miss something. We might miss the years that Israel toiled. Just as centuries of African slaves died before feeling the soft breeze of emancipation blowing ever so gently on their faces, the prophet Isaiah never saw the Messiah that he believed would reveal himself in Isaiah's lifetime. To look past this oracle for a peaceful kingdom in Isaiah's day, so that we can rejoice in the fulfillment of the text and the birth of the Christ child, can cause us to miss what we have in common with the prophet. First, we miss the interconnectedness of the Advent season. As most of you already know, the season of Advent is comprised by hope, peace, joy, and love. If the goal was to live out the season of Advent throughout the remainder of the Christian calendar, we must know that this is an all-or-nothing proposition. So we can't have more hope and more peace without having more joy and more love. It's intertwined. Hope brings peace brings joy, brings love. While we want these things for future generations, we are no different than the prophet who wants them in his lifetime. There is a danger that viewing this text solely as an oracle fulfilled by the birth of the Christ child could alleviate us from the tough struggle of active engagement in the human condition in which we live in right now. The peaceful kingdom that Isaiah 11 refers to is a passage of inclusivity based on the day that the root of Jesse stands as a signal to the people, the nation, not just Israel, that shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. Notice, if you will, there can be no peaceful kingdom void of the hope for a Messiah that is provided by God's love to bring joy to all who inquire. Now, this is not some kind of pie-in-the-sky theology. This is what can be, what should be, what must be, what will be. Isaiah is saying, my people need hope right now. My people need peace right now. My people need joy right now. My people need love right now. And I got a feeling somebody here in Resurrection got the same testimony. You need hope right now. You need joy right now. You need peace right now. You need more love and tenderness right now. Amen. Second, peace must be realized before it is material. Listen again to the words of the prophet Isaiah. A shoot shall come out of the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of its roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and the Spirit of might, and the Spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. Isaiah's oracle by itself brings a sense of peace to what is otherwise a chaotic situation. Yet there is no tangible proof of peace. We just read what Isaiah said. We hear him talk about it. But we have no proof there's peace. And we do know the Messiah hasn't come, bringing a spirit of wisdom, understanding, counsel, no fear of the Lord. This is what will happen. We already know it didn't happen in Isaiah's lifetime, but he writes about it as if it will. Our ability to realize peace is no different. We must live as if